So, and we have the majority of the members here. And as always, I'd like to thank you all for taking time to be a part of this process. It has been a fruitful process, as we can tell. I'm happy to say we submitted our report that was due, our May report that was due, and our final report is due in August, as a reminder. We are well on our way. I think when we did planning for this earlier this week or last week, I think we're down to maybe 3 meetings, maybe 2 more meetings after this. So we are well on our way to completing the task that was put before us for the traffic work group. So I'm excited about that. Today we have a few presentations. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Joel so that he can start the overview of the citations and the appeals process. But as always, thank you all for being a part of this very important process.
Yes, thank you. And I echo the sentiment, obviously. So I'll be brief because we have some folks on call here who can really dig into the specifics of this, but we just really, the one big topic we haven't touched on yet is the concept of how the citation process is going to work. And so we figured, this is going to be built into our existing systems that we have here in Baltimore County, and we've talked a lot about modeling things after speed and red light camera programs that already exist. So we thought it would be good to bring in folks who know what they're talking about on those topics. And so we sort of have a front end and a back end piece that we're talking about here. Front end is those reasons that the police department would flag somebody who got a citation that shouldn't. So your exemptions, your emergency vehicles and whatnot, people who fall into a category that shouldn't be getting those citations, and then sort of a back end appeals process is the other piece. And we've talked about local deliveries, and we'll talk more about liability transfers later on. But just wanted to bring folks into I talk about how the existing programs work. So with that, I will turn it over to Captain Brown.
Good afternoon. I'm here with Corporal Pat Wilhelm, who is the current administrator with Mobility. That's our vendor. He's administrator here for the police department that oversees the red light cameras and speed cameras. So I'm going to let him give an overview of the program, and I guess any questions you have, let us know. Pat?
Good afternoon. You need me to get into, I'm guessing, like specifics at what speed triggers, or just like the process of us approving citations?
I don't think we could fully understand what he was asking. I'm sorry.
Do you need me to explain like the speeds that trigger the events, or are you just more wanting me to explain us approving and disapproving the citations in both their red light and speed cameras?
I think more the latter.
Okay. The incidents, we'll just start with speed camera. The incidents are captured by the vendor. They maintain that in their database. We log into their database and pull up after they capture an image. The vendor, they run the tags through MBA and DMV for Savannah State tags. They get all that information, process that into a potential what would turn into a citation. We view the video and or the photos and make sure that the vehicle matches the NBA information with the information that they are listing in the potential citation. As long as, hey, we have the system is up operating normally, we approve the citation, or in some cases we do disapprove them because of vehicles that are either exempt or if they are, like in Baltimore County cases, if it's say a police car, or fire engine, or something like that, there are processes that we handle, even if it is in the wrong, that we handle that, we adjudicate that in each department. Otherwise, it's a regular vehicle, we approve the citation, and the vendor prints and mails the citation to the vehicle owner. From there, it turns into the financial part where, hey, they pay the vendor, gets the payment and all that, but that's OBS. I'll let her speak on all that. Red light is basically about the same thing. It's a longer video, which I have not looked or seen this program, but I'm sure it's similar to our red light, or for us to watch a video to see if it's small or commercial vehicle and our zone goes through, and then the vendor says, oh, it took 12 seconds to get through the roadway, then the officer has to sign off and match up video, agree with that, to approve the citation. But like I said, red light's the same thing. It is a little more time consuming to actually process citation versus the speed camera program. Just because also in the red light the video is required, speed it is not required. However, our current vendor provides the video for the speed violations also.
Open that court.
We go to court. The ombudsman prepares a court docket for us. We go twice a month normally for speed, once for red light. The current things, we're upping that schedule because we're very far behind in that.
Is there a time period you have to go to court, you have to do something? If not, okay, but they have to be sent to violation in so much time.
The citation has to be mailed for their speed and red light within 14 days.
Okay.
For Maryland registration, it's higher for out of state, but generally that's what we float below that. It takes time for the vendor to run the tags and get the proper information for it. So it's not like, hey, on Monday somebody does a violation and Tuesday citations go in play. There are sometimes the DMV, especially at a state tag, takes a while for the information to get back to the vendor for them to put that in the probable citation and then forward that to us. But it must be sent by the traffic article by law within 14 days. But with our existing and our numbers, that we do a large volume, that we are able to keep up. We don't approach even that threshold of 14 days even when there is a surge of violations to go through.
So Captain Brown, I think I'm having a little difficulty hearing. So let me see if I could reiterate what was said in terms of the process, just to help us understand and be clear about the process. So The violation is captured by a vendor. It's logged into the database by the vendor. The vendor runs the tags through the MVA, and then they process the citation. I didn't understand the part about reviewing the video and matching MVA information up at that point, and then going to the approval or the disapproval part of it. So is it a way for, I'm sorry, I didn't catch his name, who's doing it, but is it a way for him to log in so that we can hear him directly? Because I think with the mask on and all, it's a little bit hard to hear.
Is this better for you, the volume?
I don't think it's the volume. For me, it sounds muffly. Maybe it's just me. Is it anybody else?
Yeah, I was having a similar challenge, DeAndrea.
Yeah.
I mean, how about now? Can you hear me now? Oh, let me have to do it. Okay.
So
Yeah,
is
I
there
guess
another
someone-
computer?
Can I send him a link, I guess? And I'll go to his office? Hold on. I think, Joel, you sent us something this morning, didn't you?
Yes.
I'll try to find that one. Let me see, forward to,
So why don't we give him time to log in on another computer, Joel? And would it be possible if we can do the OBF presentation so that we could actually, because I think it's important information that we really should hear.
yeah, I just sent it to him, so, okay. Your call. So he don't have far to go to his office.
Okay. So is Robin logged on?
Yes, but I think she's muted. Let me. How about now?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. Good.
So
Good
thank
afternoon.
you, Robin. If you can go through with your presentation, that would be helpful while we get Captain Brown set up for the other one.
Yeah, Pat has to actually, some of his is what it follows, mine follows. Once the citation is actually issued, the customer will have, by law, same thing with Speed is the only program that does the ombudsman. Red light cameras do not. So when they get their citation, they can have a citation review, which is considered the ombudsman, and they have 30 days to actually ask for that to happen. We do have a website that automatically, at least for the speed program, they can click on it and it comes into the county site, which is actually registered with me for the email address. And then what I do is I review the citations. I review their backup of their, I look at the system. Same thing that the police department does. I go in, I review the videos. I look to see if, everything's matching up with MVA of what the officers have been shown. If there's a discrepancy, then yes, we will automatically go and void the citation. 95% of the time, I agree with the officer. It's mainly because people are just complaining that they don't think that they were going that fast, which they were. So most of the times it does go back to them, telling them if they disagree, they can request a court date. Court dates have to be, for speed cameras, they have to be requested within 40 days of issuance. After that, then they waive their right for a court date.
So, Robin, what type of appeals do you take into consideration? Can they appeal based on any reason?
They can appeal through the district court. Well, actually, they send it into us. Yes, they can appeal for any reason. They can do it because they don't think that they're driving that fast. They don't think they think the cameras are faulty. Anything that they wish to request a court date for, they can. And as Pat was stating, we do have a backlog of probably 1,500 cases right now that we're waiting for district court to allow us to start hearing for speed cameras.
Is that because of COVID though? That's not typical.
Yes,
If we're
that's
in a
because of
typical-
COVID. Yeah, no, usually we never have a problem. And it's, we have not had court since March of 2020.
Mhm.
They did let us come in November and then they stopped us, and now we're limited to only 20 people in a courtroom at a time. So it's going to take us a while to get our backlog of the speed cases hurting the courtroom. And some people have anywhere from 1 citation. I think the highest one I have so far is 25 citations.
So they can email you to the email box, and then do you have a certain amount of time that you have to respond to them, or that we're required to respond?
It does say, the ombudsman program does say that we will respond to them within 3 to 5 days. I try to get to them. I mean, I don't get that many anymore for speed. If I get 1 a month, that's a lot. Sometimes I might get lucky and get 2. I mean, in the very beginning, we did have a lot of them because it's an education. People are not educated, you know, they're learning the process of the speed. But now that we've been going through, it's maybe 1 or 2 a month. Some months I don't even get any. So, and I'm sure that's what would happen with the large truck, is that in the beginning, it's going to be heavy load of it, and then it should start winding down once we have everybody, if they're doing load, you know, deliveries and stuff like that, and we have a list of them put in a different category, we should be okay.
I think, Louis, you had a question?
Sorry, yes, thank you. Yes. So just as clarification, so because the one difference, right, is that if you were speeding, if you got a speed camera citation, I assume you probably were speeding, right? Whereas there's a legal allowance for that certain local deliveries, right, that we've been talking about in the past. So I guess I'm trying to understand if under a speed or a red light piece, if somebody appeals through the ombudsman process, are there circumstances where the citation is dismissed without the need for going to court? Because that's
Correct,
one
yes.
of the key provisions for us. So I wasn't sure if
Yes.
that might be. Could you talk through that
Yes.
a little bit, Robin, about those kinds of instances?
I didn't really talk because, like, for the speed cameras, it's pretty much it's either that we go in, if let's say they tell me that the tag number is incorrect, and sometimes they are correct, because sometimes a B will look like a D. So those automatically get voided. But the majority of the complaints that we get are that the cameras are not functioning correctly, or it's because school time, you know, that because schools during COVID are closed. Just because schools are closed, the cameras are still up and running.
Right.
That's not, the law states it's Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. No, whether school's in session or not.
So in those instances, though, where you have dismissed, so that you're saying probably the most common one where there's a legitimate reason for dismissal, it sounds like might be an erroneous license plate listing. Is that
That is
probably the
correct.
case?
That is pretty much, yes, that is. Or if it's like a stolen vehicle, but I mean, there's some people come in and write that they have a stolen vehicle, and then of course they have to provide us with a police report, and then if that's the case, then they will get that citation voided also.
Okay, and there is an opportunity for them through whatever documentation they submit to provide an explanation to you, hopefully in a simple way, right? Not too difficult to provide that.
Well, they're supposed to fill out the form that's online for the ombudsman program.
Okay.
And with that, that's where they're supposed to give their reason of why they want to. And then if they have to, since it's emailed, and they can actually also provide the proof.
Okay.
Most do not give me proof. I have to email them back and let them know that they need to give me more information for what they're requesting.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
You're
Very
welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions for Robin? Robin, if you don't mind hanging out with us for a little bit,
Sure.
that'll be helpful, because I do think that once we start to talk about ideas about setting up the citation process and the appeals process, it may be helpful
Okay.
to have your expertise, since you've been doing this for quite some time.
Oh, yes,
So-
since 2000.
Oh, okay. So yeah, we could definitely use that. So Captain Brown, are we ready to go back to the the speed and red light camera citation process, if you don't mind? Are we okay with doing that?
I believe Pat is on here. Pat, you want to try this one more time, please?
Do you know if he's called in? Because I see we have one call-in user that's an attendee, but I can, if that's him.
No, he's in the he's up listed as a presenter. I see him.
Yeah.
So we'll give Pat a few minutes. That's the challenges we run into with technology, but we'll just give him a few minutes because I think it's an important part of what we need to get an overview on to have a fruitful conversation afterwards. So hang in there, committee.
Can I ask another question actually then, DeAndrea, for Robin, maybe if she's still on?
No, Louis, you
I'm
can't.
here.
No, I'm joking.
So I'm not familiar with what the form looks like. I apologize for that. That people submit to you. When you say the form is online, do you mean it can be entirely completed online? So for example, I can go in and I type it all in right from my, webpage. Maybe I put the violation number or whatever it might be, or it's actually a paper form that just happens to be available online that I print and then scan and return or something to that effect.
If I'm not mistaken, it is on the county's website for the ombudsman program. Let me see if I can find. Let me open up the web and see if I can get it. If not, I can show you one that was actually filled out.
And the reason why I'm just asking, I'm on there and I don't see the form.
So, okay,
Go
so
ahead,
go
Ellen.
up into your search bar and just type in speed camera. On the county, you have to go into the not BCNet, the web.
In the Baltimore County site, you mean?
Yep, Baltimore County MD.gov.
Yep, I'm there. And then
Okay,
just
so
go
then up
speed
in your
camera.
search bar, just type in speed camera.
Yeah.
And then the first one, it's going to say speed camera citation review.
Okay. And I
Click
see the
on that.
citation review form.
Yep, you'll click on that.
I'm gonna pull it up here as well.
Yeah.
And then they can, so this is where they would, it tells them that they have that we will respond. I will respond. Well, they don't tell me personally, but for us that we will respond back in 3 to 5 business days.
Sure.
Sometimes it does take it if I am busy doing other things, because unfortunately, along with what I do with speed and red light, I also do collections we sue all these citations that don't get paid for Baltimore County.
So the reason why I was asking, so I do see it and have it brought up, is that, and this is, I see a fillable PDF, but it does require some, sort of other steps in the sense that I can't send this right back to you unless I save it under a new name. I'm just wondering if it makes sense to just have an actual online form, right? Where I've just typed in essentially straight from the website and then I just hit submit and it automatically gets sent with that information to the appropriate person in the ombudsman's office.
And that would be great because, but that's an IT question because they're the ones
Yes.
that set this up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I'm all for it because there's a lot of times that it doesn't come in the format that it should. Some people just don't even fill in the form. They just type it up like on an email so that it's just one step, which makes it a little bit difficult for me. But yeah, that would be an absolute great idea for them just to have it like a form and then they could just submit it from there.
So Louis, I think that's a good recommendation as we get to the discussion topics for sure. That will probably be a good recommendation from the committee in terms of setting up the citation process and how to do an appeal.
Yeah, and it wouldn't just apply to the truck piece, right? It would apply potentially where you could use that same form for the speed camera and red light violations too.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, red light cameras do not have an ombudsman. It's only speed
okay.
at this time.
I'm sorry.
Red
You
light
said
will
that.
never, yeah, so we could make the form could be, say, state for the large trucks, also for the speed, and it would just be one form for both of them, and they would just both come into the same email address that's set up through the IT.
Okay. All right, Pat, were you able to join us?
Apparently his computer did not have a microphone, so he was coming on by phone. So that's the last I heard. And
Can you guys hear me okay now?
Oh,
We
there he is.
can.
Very good.
Okay. I think where I left you guys before, after a citations issue or the vendor gets the MVA information back from either in-state or out-of-state, they attach that to the event, and then when we log into the system, the officers open up the pending events. We review the video, the camera footage, and also what is printed to make sure, hey, the citation would read a 1992 Chevy, and in the video and or pictures, yes, we see with the tag that, but that's a Camaro. We try to redundantly verify things, even if it's not required, by doing that. And then once yes, they're going 12 or more miles an hour over in the speed camera event, it's properly, the location is correct. Also, that's sometimes a issue we run into because speed cameras are movable and we'll move from one location. We have to make sure that the citation, the imprint on there, we call a data bar, matches, if I move it from Padonia Road to York Road, that citation, when you look at the picture, yes, that data bar is matching, saying, yes, they were going 52 miles an hour on York Road, not on Padonia Road. So it's just a couple things that we redundantly review and check to make sure our citations are issued correctly. I think that's it about court. Anything else?
Any questions from the committee?
I think,
All right.
I think
Go
the
ahead.
exceptions or the reasons to, I guess, I would say argue or a case are somewhat spelled out for these two, but I think the rub here is how are we going to do it for the height, weight, cameras we have, because then who's going to do it? And logistically, it could become quite a bit if we don't really make sure we do this right. How are we going to go about, what are the exceptions going to be, and how are we going to verify that it is a legitimate exception once we do get something? I think
Mhm.
that's the hard part.
And there was a comment, I apologize, right before we had to make the switch up that I wasn't entirely clear on, that I think you had said, is it that you are overwhelmed with the number that you have to get them out within 30 days notice, or you're able to keep up with those based on the number that you have? I thought I heard that said right near the end when we were having a hard time hearing.
If that was for me, it's 14 days for Maryland tags, and no, we're not overwhelmed. We do, I believe, an overwhelming amount for the amount of cameras that we have. The volume of violations that we go through, I believe, is high, but we do keep up.
Okay.
We don't even approach that 14-day cutoff where we're no longer allowed to issue citations.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Any other questions from the committee? All right, so hearing no other questions, we thought it would be important for us to get a presentation based on a current appeals process, as well as, you know, what the citations are like in the process it goes through. So I want to go back to Senate Bill 41, Section 2, that leads us into number 5, the citation process discussion topics. And just as a reminder to the committee of what the charge was, we're to develop and implement a process for the vehicle owner to easily contest an erroneous issued citation without the necessity of a court hearing. So even though some of them got an option to appeal, we need to give a recommendation for them to contest the citation without going to a court hearing. And then the second item was develop a process for the owner of a vehicle to identify and transfer liability to the operator of the vehicle responsible for incurring a citation. So that's very important here, because these may be UPS trucks, trucking trucks, and the company doesn't necessarily want to be the one to have to pay for a driver actually receiving this citation. So we need to figure out that process and how we can allow that to happen. And then
Just to
exemption.
stop you there. The vendor that we use, we do have there is a transfer of liability, which is I'm the admin to that. So what happens is that the company, whoever gets a citation, can ask for the ticket to be transfer liability. That's separate from the ombudsman program. That's something that they would mail into the vendor, and they would let the vendor know who the driver was and all their information.
So that happens before it even gets to us. That happens at the vendor level.
That's after the person gets the citation and it's mailed to the company. Let's say, like you said, UPS is the same thing with speed cameras. So if UPS gets a ticket and they know the driver, they have the option to change that over to the transfer of liability over to the driver. And then what we would do is I would change the information over to the driver's information, and then the driver then will get another citation. And then at that time, he or she will have 40 days to request for a court date, or they can do a citation, or they can do the ombudsman request.
So Robin, are those instructions given to the person that's receiving the citation when it first goes out, or do they have to go to the website and figure out how they transfer the liability?
No, all that information is on the back of the citation, which is approved from the district court. You have to have everybody has the same form, just we have a little bit different information on the front and the back of our citations. And all this information will be on the back of the citation when they are mailed the original citation. Once it's approved through Annapolis.
And if the liability is then transferred, Robin, right? So the company provides that driver information to transfer liability to the actual operator of the vehicle. They still have the option of simply paying the fine, correct? If they don't want to contest it in court.
Correct. They can either pay the ticket, they can request for a court date, or they can do an ombudsman request through the email.
Okay.
See, Robin, I knew it would be helpful to keep you around. See? All right. And then the third item was exempting certain types of vehicles from enforcement by a vehicle height monitoring system, which the exemptions, we haven't talked about those exemptions yet. So if we go based on the agenda, I'd like to open it up for a discussion around the exemptions and what we think the exemptions are, the vehicles that should be exempted are.
And I'll maybe just lead in a little bit in saying that I know we have sort of brought up a few examples as we've talked about this in the past, and I think like moving vehicles is one we've said, but I think that this is our opportunity to essentially officially create our recommendation list of areas. I think you know that the there are some vehicles listed, as we heard, for these other programs, and I think just really talking out what those categories are right now. That's what this time is for. So.
Anybody? Suggestions?
So I'll jump in and like to sort of open up the conversation around trash trucks and recycling vehicles, right? That are always going to be operating in neighborhoods. I do struggle and am very cognizant of the fact that you don't want to just give a blanket exception necessarily, because there could be trucks not servicing that area who then are using cut through routes. But, you know, so I just throw that out there for conversation.
So since trash falls under DPW&T, I can understand trash trucks being a part of it. One of the things we go through as it relates to the haulers, we try to set certain times for the haulers to go out to the different residential areas, but it doesn't always work that way for us. If it's a snowstorm, we ask them to get out there whenever they can, if they can't meet their allotted time slot to pick up the traffic. So that can change. That can change on a regular. So I could see the likelihood of a trash truck being in a residential area is because it needs to be there. Most times it's not there because they're joyriding. It's really there because they have to pick up the trash and they take the trash trucks back to the company. They're not just like driving around. So I think the instances where you would have a trash truck going through a residential area is great. So I can see that being a topic of conversation and a possible exemption. And let me just say, some trash trucks could be, they could be 3 o'clock in the morning, they could be 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It just depends on how many trucks they need to pick up at a particular area during a particular time. Right now, we run into a real situation where we needed them out there longer because there's so much trash in COVID. It's so, our numbers have increased by probably 18%, 20%. So if we try to do it now, the likelihood of having trash trucks in Baltimore County at different times of the day is great.
Could I add something? I know I'm kind of coming in late on the game with this, but with the exemptions, I think you said that you wouldn't want a certain like bracketed or general, hey, exception, absolutely, you know, say school buses. I mean, that's one of your things that you could set up as, you know, hey, no matter what, because what happens now with our exemption list, and for the most part, the vendor keeps that. Every once in a while, we get rental vehicles is a big one for speed camera. Having the vendor filter that and not even send that for us to review. It's, or an ambulance going down the road through a speed camera with its lights on. They don't know a siren's on because it's just visual, but they see that the emergency lights are on. They automatically dismiss that, according to our contract. The vendor does that for us. So my personnel doesn't even have to take the time to view that. But, you mentioned trash trucks and exemption-wise, but aren't they, as long as they're coming to 123 Main Street and you guys have that set up leading to 123 Main Street, well, they're making a delivery or, in this case, a pickup, so they're not violating the rule. So I don't know if you would need to say, oh, well, any trash truck, because if you did that, and how would you know it's a trash truck? Would you go by like the MVA listing? Because what about those dumpster things? When I was in the precinct as a traffic corporal, how many those trucks that carried the, those big metal dumpsters was always my commercial vehicle complaint because they're so loud when the thing bounces. But a regular trash truck in a neighborhood, I don't think you would have to worry about because technically they are making a delivery. I wouldn't pull that trash truck over and give them a regular ticket. So I don't think he would fall under your enforcement criteria for this program. That's just my 2 cents on that.
And I agree with what you've said. I think what we're trying to do with having an exemption, what I mean is that we're trying to identify where the citations are never issued. Sort of like you referenced, sir, on the rental vehicle, that the vendor is essentially pulling those. Because what I don't want to happen is a lot of residential trash trucks getting camera citations and having to go through the process of identifying that they're legally allowed in the residence to get the citation dismissed. Right? I'm trying to have that citation never issued in those instances, similar to what I think you were talking about for the rental vehicles. Rental vehicles are also excluded under this program as well. So that's something to be cognizant of as well.
I mean, that could be something. A lot of tractor trailers, the trailer part is, well, first off, it's always out-of-state main tags. So I don't know what kind of penalties, enforcement penalties with these out-of-state versus we can flag Maryland tags. But a lot of the trailers are also, they could be rented where you're dealing with the rental company, say Ryder or somebody, versus the guy in the tractor part, unless they do a photo on the front too, which I would hope, because the tractor is never related to the trailer.
Yeah. You can't write a citation off this program on the trailer plate. It has to be on the tractor plate for just the reasons that you've observed.
Okay, that's good.
I do think there's a difference between a traditional trash truck that we all see, that we all seen in front of our houses, whether it's trash or recycle and a roll-off dumpster. But at the same time, roll-off dumpsters are delivered sometimes for your neighbor that's getting his house renovated or cleaning all the trees out in the area. So there are some local times when that roll-off will be there, but at the same time, it's loud either way. So. And I guess while we're talking about exemptions, maybe, I guess the hard part's going to be local deliveries. All the height of all our UPS or other delivery companies that, do all the Amazon deliveries. And of course, now we're seeing Amazon having a lot of rented trucks as well, or people doing it in their own vehicle. So that's going to, I think, be the challenge is all the, what's the height of those compared to what we're targeting here.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm just going to keep jumping in unless somebody else has feedback too that they really want to respond to. I do, when I'm talking about trash and recycling, I'm talking about residential curbside type of delivery and pickup, right? So not dumpsters. In the dumpster situation, my response there would be if somebody goes into a residential neighborhood with one of those dumpsters and they're there for a legitimate purpose, then they would just use the process for contesting the citation by demonstrating that they were making a delivery in that area. Right. What I'm trying to make sure doesn't happen is that the guys who do your residential trash and recycling pickup, every single day of the week, aren't every single day of the week getting citations. That's what I'm talking about there. So I think that for the more irregular types of deliveries, that just goes through the traditional contestation process with the ombudsman or however that's set up. And then on the UPS and FedEx type deliveries, I think those don't have to be exempt. I think we can deal with that by recognizing that we talked about the problem John has with package delivery, UPS coming through his neighborhood. That can be dealt with by how high you set the cameras, right? So in some jurisdictions, we set it where it's above the threshold of a UPS truck because they don't have the problem. But then we have a variable height in John's circumstance in District 1 where we know we have a terrible problem, right? So that way they're not actually exempt. It's just picking up in those areas where there's a problem.
All right, Lewis, can I interject something in here?
It's all yours. I'm going to put myself back on mute and be quiet.
There you go. With trash truck experience, like I said before, every route has it, like Spindler does the route in my area. They're the only trucks allowed on my street because they're the only ones coming through, and they're all rear end loaders because rear end pickups are what all residents get in Baltimore County. So if you're looking at exempting certain trucks, Spindler would be the only truck on my street that would be coming through here picking up trash 2 or 3 times a week. So anybody else that would come through naturally, like you said, wouldn't be joyriding anyway, but there would be commercial vehicles coming through, roll-off trucks or front-end loaders shooting through, but there are no commercial enterprises in this area that's marked off. So we've got no reason to be in here. They're not coming in here to pick up a dumpster unless it's like you said, a roll-off can for a remodel or a roofing job. But at that point, they could do that. They could use that form, which wouldn't be that often. But
So right now, what we have are the school buses, the trash trucks, the ambulance, as long as it has an emergency lights on, is what I have listed as exemptions. So we have large, and I think that Mike is on here. The size of the large utility trucks that we have that go into the neighborhoods, Mike, they would get a violation, Mike?
Yeah, they probably would be in violation, DeAndrea. But I mean, a lot of times if they're doing business in the area, are they really considered a through truck?
I guess that's for the committee while we're talking about, I mean, because I don't see the trash trucks any different than our large utility trucks. So, the Baltimore County, when we're going out to do work. So I guess the question to the committee is, should we enter those as exemptions as well, or no? Just let them use the appeal process.
what kind of utility are you talking about?
Well, we have big trucks that go out and go into the sewers and the whole nine.
Yeah,
Okay.
vac trucks and such, yeah.
Okay, well, they would have to be exempt.
So if I can say some stuff, we do have fleet accounts, which Baltimore County government, we have with the vendor we have now for the red light and speed, we have them, all county vehicles are under a fleet account. And and I'm just getting ready to start a fleet account for the Board of Ed for all their school buses that are running the red light and speed cameras, so that all citations go to a certain area, but we could maybe look into it to see if we get fleet accounts that if these, let's say the trash truck haulers, if they would get a citation, then the vendor could possibly pull it and say, okay, this is on our fleet account for trash hauler, they're exempt. Same thing with the county vehicles. If it's a large county vehicle that's going through and it gets a citation, they can automatically exempt it out. When whoever the vendor is chosen, when you go out for this, there are a lot of rules and regulations and exemptions that we can do step by step, that they can take a lot of these questions that you're having. They can pull them as exemptions. We can down it to where, like I said, by either a tag number or a fleet account, something to that aspect, which would also help for the ombudsman program not to be overloaded constantly. It would even prevent the citizens, or the drivers, I should say, from getting a citation from the beginning.
And I think that's what I'm trying to get to, is that concept. Robin, when you say a fleet account, though, you don't necessarily mean that the vehicle has to be owned by the county or a county vehicle, do you? The reason I ask it is because my understanding, and John's in Baltimore County and has run trash trucks, but is that, don't you guys contract with a lot of different local companies, private companies to do
Right,
residential
Baltimore County
trash?
don't own,
Trash.
right, Baltimore County does not own the
Right.
trash trucks.
Okay, yeah, so when you say fleet account, though, you're still encompassing those types of vehicles, even though they're private vehicles. It's more because they're operating under a contract with the county for that residential service. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement. And what I'm saying about where we can set up a fleet account, what would happen is that the trash truck haulers, they would have to give us their tag numbers for all the vehicles all the haulers that they have. And then the vendor will make it as like a fleet account, so that, and it'll ding it every time something happens. Anytime there's a citation, and we could talk to them to see, is okay, so if you see that this tag keeps going through, instead of sending a citation out because it's a trash truck, pull it and don't even let it go to the police for approval.
And we could do that because we are required to inspect the vehicles once a year. So we should have all of the vehicles tag numbers to be able to do that. So that could be a process that could be worked out.
Yeah, all my tag numbers, all my trucks are inspected once a year by Baltimore County. They have the tag number, they have the serial number, they have the weight of the truck. They have all the vital information on record. And once a year, they inspect the truck. So any hauler working for Baltimore County would have an inspection on record. And like I said before, all the haulers are only going to be in one area. Spindler does this area, but he only does his route. I do Lansdowne area. I only do my route. So you wouldn't find them all over the county anywhere else. If you start to find other trucks in other areas, then it'd be reason to see why they're going there, or whether they're doing commercial work on the side.
Okay. So it sounds like we've kind of tossed around. We don't have many vehicles on the exemption list, but with that, I'd like to see if we could move to some conversation around the citations and the process to making it where the vehicle owner can easily contest an erroneous citation without the necessity of a court hearing. So I do like the idea of being able to fill out the form online and just send the form in. and understanding that the liability can be transferred before it even gets to the county. It can be transferred, the owner, the UPS owners, because I would assume that the tag would be registered to UPS for, and I'm just using UPS as an example. UPS gets the ticket, they can transfer the liability based on the verbiage on the back of the citation to that employee. And then maybe that employee, if they wanted to do an exemption, maybe the form can be filled out, so they send it in, and maybe we get a certified manifest as a part of how they say that they legitimately were supposed to be in that area. So that would be one suggestion I would have.
And as far as them attaching paperwork, that would be better for me when I'm doing the ombudsman, because in that way I have it, and then I can just get right back and tell them that, it's either, no, I don't see that this qualifies for, an abatement, or, you need to give me more information, or I can text back or email back and just say that we're going to go ahead and get rid of the citation. And then hopefully there's going to be a way that we can put things into the vendors. I don't know which vendor. I know there's two vendors out there that actually do these large truck
But I would
monitoring.
say it needed to be is there a way to certify a manifest as opposed to, because I know you can also make up a manifest.
That's
So
true.
is there a way to certify a manifest for those in the trucking industry that you would suggest, so that we don't just get a whole bunch of manifests to say I was supposed to be there?
No, so I'm going to definitely weigh in on this because Joel asked me to reach out and get things like sample bills of lading and things like that. And what we have essentially discovered is that it varies widely in terms of what different companies or industry sectors have available to them, right? So when you say a certified manifest, that doesn't mean anything to me, DeAndrea, in terms of what that looks like, and it would be so much different by company. And so, for example, what I would say, like, hold on here, I got to pull back my history back with Joel. Unless, Joel, feel free to jump right in while I am pulling this up. But I would say that you want a consistent process for how people contest citations, but I don't think you can require consistent documents because different industries have far different types of things. So, for example, home heating delivery, they actually sent me these tickets that I think easily demonstrate, that would have address and and so they have these heating tickets, but they don't have manifests in the way that you might be thinking of it, but demonstrate where they were in fact, making a delivery, for example. So I think UPS and FedEx, actually, I think they're going to have to demonstrate that they actually had a package delivery. But when I asked them for a bill of lading, their bills of lading are all these logistical and longitudinal numbers and things that you can't make heads or tails of. So at the end of the day, I think that we would be best off if we just said, we suggest certain types of documents. So, something that demonstrates proof of delivery in the area, and then we leave it open-ended with just some terminology, bill of lading, delivery ticket, something like that, as opposed to trying to require the same documentation from all sectors, because you will not get it. And essentially it'll become impossible for anybody to contest a citation then.
So then, Louis, let me ask you, because I'm just curious. How do we validate that their lading or their delivery ticket, that just wasn't something that the driver printed off of Google and sent it in? Because I don't, and I'm asking that because I'm asking that because we want the process to be fruitful, but if everybody can just send in an exemption, just send it, then the cameras does nothing for us. It won't deter them from going up the street.
So, go ahead.
You must have went on mute, Louis.
Yeah, Lewis, you went on mute.
Oops, I'm sorry. I was going to say it sounded like Joel might have been ready to jump in because I pulled different samples and sent over to him just as some ideas. But even things like, well, I know Jeff Fraley, I don't think Jeff is on here today. I was hoping he would be. But for example, he even explained to me, Lewis, we actually don't even have anything that would happen. We literally, they do commercial dumpsters. And so he said, oftentimes what will happen is, hey, I'll get a call from Domino's that says to me, hey, we're full. Can you come pick it up? Right. So he said, my submission, if I got a citation, I would ask for a letter from my customer validating that I was requested to make a pickup at that location on that day. So, you know, do I think with electronics that people can make things up? I do. Do I think you're going to see that to some large extent? No, I don't think that at all, because I think when we have the cameras in place, what we've seen in places in Baltimore City where, you know, they had terrible problems with trucks, and guess what? Now they don't have any problems. So.
What kind of exemption process does Baltimore City have?
They have a form that you fill out, and then they also have what I'll call a very informal hot list where you can basically reach out to them about becoming exempt. I don't like their process because it's too informal to exclude a certain type of vehicle. It was not done well. I'll just leave that there. So.
Yeah, they were fairly vague when they responded to my inquiry about that concept of we sort of have this list, but yeah.
So it's open. It's an open conversation on the floor for the committee.
I do have one point. You keep talking about, hey, like, we need to come up with exemptions and stuff like this, and these trash trucks in the neighborhoods and having to always prove, doesn't the system, my understanding, it would take a photo or whatever it's going to do in the beginning of, say York Road, there's signs posted, you cannot drive a 5-ton or more vehicle on York Road anymore. So it takes your picture, say at the city line, and if you make it up to, you know, Towson, you know, 3 miles away, it's a timing thing. That was what my understanding was, how this worked, that even if you come in with 6 bills of lading saying, I went to St. Joe's, I went to Caesar's Pizza, I went wherever, as a FedEx person, but we would have, hey, you went past this camera here at 3:05 p.m. and you made it 3 miles up the road at 3:06 p.m. with another image. Obviously, you didn't make a delivery. Isn't that how this system would work? So, I mean, I would think that, and then the officers who would be reviewing the events, you know, I think that is your filter for not having probably to do all these, well, we're going to exempt trash trucks in a neighborhood, because I don't know which streets you are targeting. Are you doing more of connector roads that lead to neighborhoods that have the weight limitations on it versus actual neighborhoods? Because if you did do exemptions and you said the Pat Wilhelm Trash Truck Company is exempt, then that frees me up. My guys are going to go on any commercial or any road at all and say, "No, we're exempt. We're exempt."
So Pat, I definitely appreciate your feedback, but this is one of the requirements that that this is one of the charges that that has been put before us, which is why we're going down this road. So this was something that was laid out in the legislation that we have to discuss as a committee and give recommendations on. So that's why we're going down this road.
Okay.
Do we all have the ability to share screen or no?
I can give it to you if you have something to pull up.
Well, yeah, I can just show a few examples that I just pulled up here locally. Joel, if you did, just to give you an idea, for example, on some of the things that we got back.
Okay.
Yeah, let me know if it works now. I think I've given you.
Yeah. Okay, so can everybody see my screen right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is an example from a company called, well, actually, this isn't Tevis's, but this is one of our home heating oil delivery companies, right? So you can see it literally has a list of the locations that the driver has to deliver to that day. Griffith Energy, here we go. And then down here, these are actually the receipts that are provided. Sorry, I have that rotated right now. Right, that demonstrate where the pickup was, the time, and the information there. Similar type of thing in operation here. So this is Tevis Energy, right? And they had this delivery at 1026 Aaronsdill Road, right? And it gives you an idea on the fact that they made a legitimate delivery there that day. Even has date and time delivered. So could you, DeAndrea, yes, try to manipulate something like this if you really were trying to do that? But that's pretty good information from a company to try and show that, in fact, it really did have a legitimate reason to make a delivery there. And then let's see, I've got one other one just from a household goods moving company that, okay, so this just gives you a sense. This one's not filled out because this is just a draft. I mean, this is just their bill of lading, right?
It's not showing, Louis. Try it again. It's not showing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, right. I did not share, I don't think, that particular item. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, so for example, right, in a scenario like this is a household goods moving company, right? They would have the origin filled out, they would have the customer's destination filled out and the like. And so, you know, that's, to me, a legitimate demonstration if they're in a scenario where they need to be able to provide, you know, validation that they were in the area legally. So with that, I'll stop sharing and just let the committee discuss.
So it's an open discussion on the floor in terms of the exemption being the driver being able to attach documentation, suggestions of documentation to the citation for a waiver, I guess, of the citation. And my question to the committee is, are you all in agreement with that as a recommendation to put forward?
I do believe probably having some guidelines so people have something they have to adhere to. That way we don't get just a generic form that doesn't tell you a whole lot. That way it's, you know, the whoever it is can be convinced, Robin can be convinced that in fact this does look legitimate based on the details given. And I realized the receipt for the oil deliveries that was really nice, but I don't think we're going to get that too often. I don't know. I'm hoping we do, but and I guess I think our main purpose here is to make it easy to exempt, so that way there's not a lot of logistics to try to go through a bunch of paperwork to try to figure out is this good or is it not. So I think the hard road is going to be I think Wise Avenue, where there are quite a few trucks that are going to companies on Wise Avenue and right again Graves Road that are going to, let's say, start at let's say Merritt Boulevard and go all the way down the road to Graves Road, which is right before it jumps on the North Point Boulevard. That's what we want to avoid, is getting hundreds of their trucks a month that we have to go through all the paperwork to figure out should they be exempt, should they not. So I think that's what we're trying to do here, to not make it so it's so burdensome, right?
Right, not so burdensome for the ombudsman that would have to review the paperwork, as well as not so burdensome so that anybody can still go down a route and send us anything under the sun. But remember, at the end of the day, it's a recommendation by the committee. So council may take it, they may not. It's a recommendation.
One thing I can tell you with the exemption process is that if you make somebody exempt and fill out the paperwork every time they go through, they're going to get tired of doing that and go the other way.
Okay, so the paperwork may work.
So the paperwork to me would be a deterrent, because I wouldn't want to fill the paperwork out on the email or whatever and send it in every time I got caught.
Mm-hmm.
So for the people that don't have any kind of bill of lading or any paperwork to officiate, they'd have to draw something up. I think that would be too labor intensive to avoid the issue. Just go the other way.
Yeah, if you're not legitimately in the area, that makes a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a recommendation to have them do the fillable form, as we currently do with some processes that we have in place. Make it where that form can be emailed, as well as you attach some documentation to show evidence as to the reason why you were in that location. But we don't have any specifications around what that documentation should be.
Well, I think we could word it in a way, DeAndrea, right, that suggests, that it must show, for example, your ultimate destination, right? There has to be an address on there that demonstrates where you were going, right? And then you could use, again, sort of open-ended language, similar, documents such as bills of lading, delivery tickets or receipts, right? Those kinds of things, manifests, that would be leaving it with some guidance of these sample documents, depending on what your company might have, and that it must show the address where your delivery was going to be made.
Okay. All right. All right, so that would put us at the discussion around the exemptions, the citations, and then we had a very small discussion about the liability transfer mechanism, which Robin put on the table, that there's a very easy transfer mechanism on the back of the citation, where when they receive it, they can just transfer the liability to a person within their company at that point, and then I'm assuming we will follow the same rules as, you know, send it back in with the transfer liability on the back of the ticket, on the back of the citation, and then we will issue the citation to that person. Is everybody okay with that process as a seamless liability transfer process?
I would think that that would work. For one thing, business owners are not going to pay too many fines for their drivers. So at that point, they're going to transfer something over to somebody. Somebody's going to pay other than them every time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so with that, we have covered number 5. If there's no other questions or concerns or items that you all want to put on the table.
Do you mind if I just jump back to the exemptions real quick, only because I found some notes from an earlier meeting of a few things we had previously said.
Mm-hmm.
Just to make sure we have them rattled off. At one point we had said public transit vehicles, which I think is sort of in the same region as school buses. And then 2 that were sort of thrown out that I think are kind of open-ended for discussion were things like moving vehicles, landscaping vehicles, and then like a BG&E type home energy vehicle. So
I'll jump on that in terms of on the moving side. So that one bill of lading that I showed was for actually a household goods moving company. I don't think the volume for a moving company is such that they're likely to be in that area or that particular route with such great frequency that we're creating a major burden on them to perhaps just fill out the regular exemption process as long as they can demonstrate that they necessarily need a, blanket exception. So because it's not across the board in terms of how frequently they're going to be in there. On the landscape side, I'm not convinced that landscape vehicles are going to typically trigger the cameras because their height is not very high in many cases. So, if you're talking about, somebody that's got a pickup with a trailer, that has a lawnmower, on the back of it, I don't think that that's probably going to even trigger the camera because it's not high enough.
All right,
So-
so we want to leave landscaping vehicles off but add public transit vehicles and not add moving vehicles. I mean, moving trucking company vehicles. Everybody good with that?
And then, sorry if I missed it, did you reference like a BG&E or a home energy?
Oh, I didn't. What was the consensus on BGE? I consider BG&E like the Baltimore County government utility vehicles. I don't think they're just driving around.
Yeah, I would think that you'd give an exemption for BGE and utility vehicles. Like you said, they're not going to be just driving around. They're going to where they belong.
Okie dokie.
That also
All
going
right.
to include some of the tree trimmers that have large vehicles, like Aspen, and I forget what the other names of the other companies are that come in with their oversized trucks that are taking down trees. I think one of them's like Davy.
I would
You
think they'd have,
consider landscaping vehicles?
I would think landscaping vehicles and tree trimming vehicles would have some kind of a paperwork saying
Correct.
the address they were working at.
Yeah. They would be able to establish legitimacy for a purpose where they're at.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think they'd be so overwhelmed with them that they're inundated and burdened to provide that paperwork.
All right, any other vehicles we want to consider? All right. All right, so I think that we had a good discussion on the exemption, citations, and liability transfer. Joe, can you take us into the signage discussion?
Yeah, so I think this is sort of another piece that we have discussed but haven't really closed out before, which is this the idea of changing the signage from the current 3/4 ton listing to the 5-ton listing, which is more appropriate for folks. And I think my impression was that the work group in general agreed that this was a change that should be made, but I wanted to just put it back out there to confirm that this is the case.
Joel, I am opposed to that, and I believe the traffic department was opposed to that as well when we had one or two of the fellows there representing.
Well, we have Mike Pilsinger on the call.
I'm not sure about that, Ron. I mean, it'd be very consistent with what the state has, so we're kind of for it. What we heard was back around 2008, the council did not want it to change because they believe it's a lot bigger truck, but it's really not.
Is there an opportunity in the recommendation to, because I appreciate Ron's concerns, right, that we didn't want to, and that the council didn't want to raise the ire of a bunch of constituents who suddenly thought that we were allowing bigger trucks on their roads, that it be incorporated as part of when signs need replaced, that the recommendation of the committee would be that it be replaced with, you know, the consistent 5-ton signage, since that really is what the law is.
Now,
Go ahead.
one thing I can tell you is I talked to the DOT people on Benson Avenue when they were pulling trucks over. And the person in charge said they would not pull over anybody on that sign because that sign was incorrect and should be changed to 5-ton. Unless they were going to change the sign to 5-ton, they wouldn't enforce the 3/4 ton law. And that was directly from the DOT people, Baltimore County DOT, that stopped in front of my house and were pulling trucks. Now, I don't know what this theory is, but you either got to maintain equilibrium and everybody enforces the same law or not.
So Captain Brown, is that an issue for you all?
Yeah, I actually did sit down with my commercial vehicle folks who have been doing this for some time, which work in the area that he was just talking about, and they believe it's long overdue to replace these signs. Even if we do so, you know, first in the areas where we're having these issues and then go on and replace other ones. Because I know being a police officer as long as I have, it has been confusing for years. Because 3/4 ton, I mean, there's so many trucks on the road now that are over 3/4 ton. That's so many, and so it's confusing. But I think we all know at the end what we're talking about. We're all talking about the 18-wheelers, and that's what we don't want in our neighborhood. So you know, we talked about this for quite a while, and they believe it's long overdue, and it's been a confusing part for years as to why the county hasn't done that. So the recommendation is yes to change it to 5-ton.
Well, let me just say in the Dundalk area, I haven't seen anyone pulled over and ticketed for anything over 3/4 ton, 5 ton, a Sherman tank or anything else.
So Ron, what's the concern with changing the sign? Maybe I just don't understand.
Well, it's already been mentioned that the locals are going to think that we've approved something to allow bigger trucks to be on the roads. Now, my phone's going to ring off the hook, and I got to refer them to somebody, whether it be the police department or traffic department. I can't take all that on my shoulders.
We can handle the calls. I think we can explain it, and everyone will understand once we explain that, you know, that's what we're targeting. That's what it's been all along. It's just been a confusing issue for not only the police but the public for years. And I think we can handle that and we can explain it. It'll just be a little bit of learning curve in the beginning.
So I'd like to put it out to the committee. Are we all recommending that we change the signs to 5 tons versus the 3/4?
Yes, with the proviso that we also have a good public information campaign to sort of decrease the impacts of it on the police, on Mr. Metzger and everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, if I can just jump in real quick. I agree with Ron here. I mean, I understand the we're gonna definitely have to do major outreach, you know, in all 7 districts. I mean, if we start changing those signs, I mean, and I understand how everybody feels about this, but I mean, when you think about it, it probably would be smart to change it to 5 ton. Because I mean, there's pickup trucks that are over 3/4 ton. And technically, I could drive my pickup truck down a residential road, and the Baltimore County Police could ticket me if they wanted to. So, I mean, I'm all in agreement with changing it, but we would have to come up with a real good outreach plan as far as getting that information out to the public, to make sure everybody is aware. And at least, I mean, my recommendation would be to give them, you know, notice, like once the signs are changed, sort of like we do with the speed cameras. Hey, the signs are being changed, and like, you know, 30 days from now they'll start being enforced.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just my 2 cents on this particular issue.
Anybody else got any comments?
Is this program going to be like the speed camera program when when a camera goes into effect, there's a 30-day warning process? Or are we going right to citations?
I don't think we've gotten to that point yet, Robin. I
Oh.
think,
Yeah, it's a mandatory warning for first offenses actually in the law. So,
Okay.
yeah. But I would be supportive of the recommendations about 5 ton, certainly, but understand with the caveats that you would want some public outreach and education and the like. So.
Okay, so we're going to make the recommendation that we move to 5 tons with some public outreach. That's the consensus of the group.
I
Now,
need to
how
go
we
on
move to the-
record, Deandra, I need to go on record to say that I'm opposed. So it's not a unanimous decision. I am opposed to it.
Okay. So, in order for us to put a recommendation in the report, we as a committee need to come to some kind of consensus. Either we're going to put it in the report or we're not going to put it in the report. And I know that this is the first time we've had an instance where we've had someone on the committee that's not necessarily in agreement. So in this case, I'm going to ask the committee members to give me your thumbs up or thumbs down, because we got to put something in the report. And we know we're not going to be 100%, but I think we should go with the majority of what the committee recommends. is everybody in agreement with that approach?
One question I have for Ron is, what is the alternative to not changing the signs? What would we do? You know,
Well, they stayed this way forever, so I don't see the downside. But let me say, this has to come back to the county council, and I don't want to speak for the county council, but I want to say I don't think a few of those councilmen are going to be any happier than I am. So you all do what you want, but I'm going to remain opposed.
but the only problem I have is if the county DOT won't enforce the signs that we have now, what good are the signs that we have now if they won't enforce it? So either the Baltimore County has to enforce the signs that we have now, or we have to change the signs.
Well, I
And if
don't know
you
about
enforce
your
the signs
area.
that you have now, does that mean that certain vehicles will get citations that should not get citations?
Yeah.
Is that, I'm asking, is that what that means? Because I thought that that's what that meant. If we enforce 3/4 ton, there's some trucks that are 3/4 tons that should not be receiving a citation. Is that correct?
Yes, because I think it was already observed that a pickup truck is more than 3/4 ton.
I'd like to know the last pickup truck that's a 1 ton that got a ticket, got a violation for that. To the best of my knowledge, and I've been a Dundalk guy all my life, to the best of my knowledge, I haven't seen any tickets for over 3/4 ton. But we can let the police answer that. Well, I believe that part of the reason, and I mean, just because you haven't seen the tickets doesn't mean they haven't happened, but at the same token, I think because of the fact that the sign says 3/4 ton, it's tough to enforce because I think we all agree that it is ridiculous, or a lot of us agree anyway, that because it does cover your landscaping truck, it does cover so many other things, it does cover a 1 ton vehicle. So we as police understand we're not going to ticket this because I don't think that's what it's targeting. But again, we're not supposed to overly interpret what the sign means, and that's why we prefer it just to say 5 ton, because it conceptually now covers anything over 3/4 ton. But I think we all know that since that's probably not the intent, we're not necessarily routinely writing citations for that over 3/4 ton. That makes sense.
So is the 3/4 ton limit, is that a scale weight or a vehicle size? Like a 2,500 Chevrolet or a 3,500 is 1 ton? So is it a scale weight or is it a vehicle size?
It's vehicle size, basically what's on the registration.
Okay, so it's a 1 ton pickup.
It's obvious that a tractor trailer is more than 3/4 ton, or some of the other bigger trucks that we've discussed. Now, in the Dundalk area, Bethlehem Steel was there for generations, and tractor trailers have been going all around Dundalk for generations. We've not had any problems with those signs. But I guess at the end of the day, like Deandra said, we are just making recommendations. If for whatever reason it doesn't, go forward, everything we propose, then so be it. I mean, we can only do the best we can with the group we have here, but that makes sense.
Right.
I would agree with that statement. Is it likely that they're going to change and the county council is going to change it? Probably not. But I think we would be short-sighted not to recognize it in the report. We even have a letter from DPW that was circulated several meetings ago, back when Steve Weber was there, saying that the signs should be changed. And so, I think we should recognize that in the report, understanding the reality of what Ron is suggesting, which is that they probably won't be changed.
Okay. So, how about I get a vote on who does not want to add the recommendation into the report? We're voting, just so you know, we're voting at this point.
So you're voting not to not to change the signs.
Right, I'm asking who's voting to not change the signs?
Gotcha. Okay. Ron is on mute.
That would be me.
So you, Ron, you're voting not, anybody else voting with Ron? All right, Ron, I'm sorry, the vote passes.
I understand. I totally
Okay.
understand. I just want to go on record as being opposed.
No problem.
And I think we can make a note in the report that it was not unanimous. I mean, I think it can be literally noted for the record in our recommendations.
Yeah. All right. So that was a fruitful discussion. Ron is leaning up again. Ron, what do you want to say? Go ahead. Go ahead. Tell us. You're muted. All right. Okay. So it appears as though we've gotten through the agenda. I am, because I've been doing a lot of talking, I am going to turn it over to Joel to make sure we did not miss anything, and then go into the discussion of our upcoming meetings, which I think we're down to 2 or 3 meetings.
Yeah, I think when we look back at our original charge, the bill that I pulled up earlier, that we've hit most of what we need to hit here. I think the one big question left on the table is the number of cameras, because the local law that goes into effect needs to include a limit on the number of cameras. I think that my general thought on that was to sort of pull up our map that we made in the March meeting of our camera locations and make sure we're set with those, and then talk about how that affects the number we want to limit. But obviously, that is sort of the work group's prerogative on what methodology you want to use to select that number, but that is our big task that's left. And then I imagine we'll use the rest of the next meeting to sort of tie up any other loose ends. You know, there was one location that I want to sort of go back to and talk about, but I think one more working substantive meeting is what we need to help us put together the final report, and then I want to have the timeline work a little differently this time, since we sort of came up against the clock on the preliminary report, but to have the final report ready, or a draft of it ready, long before the final meeting, so that that final meeting can be a real review of it with some proper time to prep. So short version of that is one more working meeting. Big decision point is the number of cameras, and then one last meeting to have the work group mark up the draft report. If I'm forgetting anything that we have not really covered, I would love for folks to throw those topics out, though.
I
Joel,
will say, go ahead, Ron.
I'm sorry. I do have a question about the number of cameras. Are we limited by anyone on the number? And obviously they should be prioritized, so we have to figure out the priority, I would assume.
Well, I don't know that prioritizing where the cameras would go was a part of the charge. I think it was just limited, and Joel, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was just recommending a number of cameras to have. Is that right, Joel?
Yes. So we do need to name a number of cameras. I think that we don't have a huge number of locations to the point where we need to start pulling some off, because there are some that are prioritized. But I think that having that map back up while we talk about the number would be a good idea so that we can make sure that that's the case and that we're not putting too few locations for the number of cameras or too many I think that's why I want to sort of revisit the locations themselves when we talk about the number of cameras.
Joel, when we do that, could we have in addition to actually having the map that you want us to look through the spots again, could we have a list of the locations also? That way we can sort of visually see, hey, there's 10 places that we've identified as opposed to, just 10 blips on the map
Yes.
as well.
Yeah, so we have a write-up that we did at the last meeting that I will say is definitely in draft form because it represents our best read on what we talked about at that meeting. So we can send that out probably Monday. I just want to look at it to make sure it's correct, but so that folks have that on hand and will hopefully tell me before the next meeting if it doesn't match what they think we talked about. So I will send out that write-up so that you can have that in hand.
Thank you.
Hey, Joel.
Yeah.
One quick question for you. Are the cameras going to be movable?
Yes.
Going to be mobile?
So, right. So we'll have more locations
Okay.
than cameras is my understanding.
Okay, good.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none. As always, I appreciate the work that we're doing on this committee. I think that it's going very well. I'm excited about the fact that we don't have too many more meetings, I must say. I enjoy spending time with you all, but I am excited about that. I just appreciate the effort that you all put into this process. And Joel and Mia, you all are doing a bang up job keeping this straight and making sure that the committee is able to meet the charge that's before us. So if no other time do I get to say thank you, I want to say thank you because you all do all the hard work associated with this. So thank you so much. And committee, you'll be hearing from Joel soon, probably in the next couple of weeks, in regards to our next meeting and our topics of discussion. But thank you all, and I hope you have a great weekend.
DeAndrea.
Thank you, everybody.
DeAndrea, real quick, I appreciate you giving Joel and OGA their acolytes for the work they've done on this project, but do not take away the work that you and DPW have invested into this project as well. You guys have done an awesome job, especially like mapping it out, and the time that you and your team has put into this is remarkable. So that's what makes us a great team working together. And I just wanted to make sure that I said thank you to you for your work and your team's work. So could you pass that along to them?
I sure will. Thank you, Pete. We appreciate y'all.
Ditto to
Thanks so
Pete.
much.
Yes.
Thank you, Deandra. Thanks, guys.
All right. Have a great weekend.